Ladies and gentlemen, can I take this opportunity to introduce to the stage Lorraine Chase, Nigel Rees, and Robin Sebastian.
Are you Lorraine Chase by any chance?
I am.
I've
I've
seen you on TV quite a lot.
Lorraine, you did Just a Minute as well, didn't you?
I did quite a lot with Kenneth, and I got asked to do a radio show that was, one of those where you get on and you have to just chat about stuff. And they said, well, we've had Ellen Spitzy talking about battered wives, and we've had someone else talking about this and someone else talking about that. We thought you might come along and talk about anorexia.
Comedy, was it? A comedy?
Yeah. One of those daytime phone-ins.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I went, why? And they went, well, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Thank you very much, but I'd like to do the show. So they're worrying because you're supposed to read the papers, you're supposed to look at all the music and put your music on, and then have a guest. So they kept saying, well, what are you going to talk about? I said, well, I'll think about it on the day. They're like this. So I started off, I said, I tell you what, you've had Ellen Spitzer, you've had somebody else talking about atomic bombs, you've had somebody else talking about that. There's a famous saying in this country, and if you know it, you'll realise why I'm not saying it word for word, but it goes something like, don't be a mug all your life, have a day off. I said, so this is our day off. And I told Kenneth about this. I said, Kenneth, would you... It was funny when I rang him up. So I rang him up and you go, hello. Don't come to his voice either.
That's very good.
Everybody's at it today.
So I said, oh, Kenneth, it's Lorraine. Who? I was always doing that. Lorraine, I've just taken my sleeping tablet. Oh, but Kenneth, forgive me. And he'd always do that sort of thing. They go, I can't do that either. But he was really sweet. I love that man. He got me out of holes in the show, and he got me out of holes during, my life with him. And I said to him, Kenneth, will you be my guest? And he said, well, what sort of thing is it? Told him. And he said, only if you promise that people don't ask me the same old questions.
Is there a problem with the sound there?
So, and he very sweetly said, yes. So all the way during the show, I said, now listen, Kenneth's going to be me guest. So if you think you've seen the best of Kenneth, you ain't yet. Please, if you ring up and you talk to him, do not ask the same old, questions. Please stretch him, because you are in for a treat. And he was a treat. The man was a treat.
Yeah. I mean, Nigel, what was the Just a Minute was one format, but you did quote unquote.
Quote unquote.
What was the difference in the format, and how did it suit Kenneth?
Well, when we started quote unquote in 1976, John Lloyd, the founding producer, and I, we decided we wouldn't have people who were on other panel shows, but we made an exception in favour of Kenneth, who was already on Just a Minute, because he was well read and he had a wonderful way of telling little anecdotes. For example, one that he told was about the two men coming out of a London club, and one said to the other, I've just been to a Vita.
Very cool.
And the other man said, you don't look very brown. And Kenny put in his diary, the Evita story went very well. So that was that. And we had him on about a dozen times in the early days of quote unquote. And then we dropped him because, frankly, he was very difficult. He always had to win. And in those days we had a score. We long ago abolished the score. And I was left with saying, well, at the end of this week's game, Kingsley Amis has no points, and this week's winner is Kenneth Williams. And I got rather fed up with that. And also, I found that after recording 2 shows with him, because we always did them 2 at a time, I couldn't sleep, because his voice was going round in my head. So that was Kenneth, but he was a very, very funny man.
Lorraine, was he quite competitive on Just a Minute?
Well, it was quite funny because he kept saying to me, come on, just a minute. We were in my first play was with Kenneth Williams, and we were at the Fortune Theatre, and he was doing it between the show. So he said, come on just a minute. And I said, Kenneth, I wouldn't be able to do it, I promise you. I couldn't keep going like that, and I'd be repeating myself all over. No, he said, you'll be fabulous. I said, do you think so? I should have known better. He said, yeah, so I'll get there, and I'm on the other side for a start. And I'm thinking, well, that's a bit odd. So anyway, it comes to me, and dear Nicholas, who I absolutely adore, said, and Lorraine, now you're going to do a minute on clothes. And I went, well, hesitation. And I honestly was such a little rotter on it. But it was very funny because what I realised was you got the subject, you interrupted, you got a point, and you continued it. So it's going round, it comes to me again, and I think, hang on a minute, we've been told the rules, and the rules wasn't in it that you couldn't interrupt yourself. So it came round to me again, and they said, do a minute on so-and-so, and I went, so-and-so, beep, and they went, Nicholas went, yes, Lorraine, I said that twice. She said, oh, you did? That means I get the subject and I continue, don't I? So I said, yes, that's right. So I went, right, hesitation. And Nicholas said to me, he said, I think we're going to have to stop just a minute and make a new rule. Well, Kenneth, as you can imagine, was the other side. You can do it for me, doing all that. Oh. And of course, he wouldn't let me forget it afterwards.
But we're talking about getting into the part of Kenneth. How do you actually prepare? I mean, we've got obviously quite a few people that do Kenneth here today. We've got quite a few people who aren't here who are doing Kenneth. How do you actually get in?
Elvis, isn't it?
Yes, he hasn't quite left the room, has he? How do you actually get into the role? How do you get into the part?
Well, I mean, being a method actor that I am, I just listened to all the recordings, and to be honest, I didn't even read the biography or the diaries or anything. I just looked at the funny side of it all because, I wanted to find out how he made people laugh, you see. And we're all coming back now, you see. But he really becomes part of you, and then I would end up going to auditions for other things, straight theatre, and they'd say, well, I'm glad you're laughing, and they'd say, oh, you sound like Kenneth Williams, and I was like, oh, I don't know! But I mean, the trouble is, he's in me, and I love playing Kenneth Williams, and being Kenneth Williams, I haven't had a career, frankly. But I just listen to as many of the recordings as possible, and that's really down to Keith Wickham, of course. I've had my nose broken, so that it actually becomes like Kenneth Williams. I've got a broken septum. I don't know if you had one as well, but certainly when we were doing Round the Horn Revisited in the West End, I had a terrible throat infection. They sent me to a private doctor, you see, and he stared at me and he said, your nose. We didn't talk like that, obviously, or else he'd have the job. But he said, your nose, it's fascinating. I'd love to have a go at your nose. I said, well, that would be great, because at school I was bullied terribly. I won't go into it. But someone trod on my face. Chap called Nietzsche White from Margate. I'm glad you find that very funny. Anyway, so I got a broken septum, you see. And he said, I can. He didn't say that. He said I could fix that, you see. And what we would do, we would cut round here, and then we'd pull it up, and then we'd score the septum, and then put it back. But my one concern was, but would I still be able to do that? Because obviously my life was going to be playing Kenneth Williams. There's no point in being really good looking, because it would have made me very dishy. If I can't pull the face. So I said, no, thank you very much indeed. And they just gave me a couple of days off. Sorry, what was the question?
I don't know. But we've only got the room for another couple of hours. No, thank you, Robert.
No,
Nigel.
We're talking about radio, and I discovered Kenneth through listening to Hancock's Half Hour in the 50s, before my own voice broke. Yeah. And he just had very small parts in Hancock. He was the judge or the policeman or the council official or something like that. And I discovered a way to do the voice at the age of 14. Before my voice broke. And perhaps we could have a little masterclass here. Yeah. The way to do the Kenneth Williams voice is to put your tongue against the roof of your mouth.
Your own mouth,
yes. Please. And then to talk around the side. And once you do that, and perhaps you'd like to do it, put the tongue against the roof of the mouth, and then talk around the side. And as soon as you do that, immediately you have the Kenneth Williams authoritative voice, just like that, you see. And I've been doing it ever since. And not least when I took part in the world's worst radio show, which was the Betty Witherspoon show in 1972-ish. It was terrible. We recorded 13 and they only broadcast 10. And the scripts were terrible and absolutely ghastly. But Miriam Margolyes, to name only two, and we were the supporting act to Ted Ray and Kenneth Williams, and that was quite an experience to see Kenneth at work, because he wouldn't let things go. If things weren't right, he would bash away.
What was the format for Betty?
It was a sketch show with Ted Ray playing his violin and all the rest of it. It was pretty bad.
And what about Round the Horn? That was fabulous.
Well, it was marvellous. And Beyond Our Ken before that. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I got to meet Kenneth for the first time when there was a radio show called Movie Go Round. And I used to cover films being made, including at this very studio, Boreham Wood, MGM Boreham Wood, as it was then. And I covered... The first film I covered was Carry On Up the Khyber, which many people consider to be the best of the carry-ons, and closely followed by Carry On Camping. And I did a long interview with Kenneth about this, and I said, well, Kenneth, about the title of this film, is there a sort of a double entendre there? He said, oh, yes, you mean the sort of camping that's not done in a field.
Two of the very most popular, and actually they were filmed, fun enough, back to back. They were the two that followed each other in the series. Robin, you've obviously studied the scripts of Beyond Our Ken, Round the Hall, Twice Ken. What do you think, even looking back now, they were ahead of their time?
Oh, completely. I mean, they're timeless, aren't they? I mean, they stand up to the test of time easily. I listen to them, well, endlessly when I'm decorating. That's my other job. But they are absolutely brilliant, and there's so much comedy. It just doesn't stand up to the test of time, but they're brilliant. They really are. And of course, I really enjoyed Hancock as well. I didn't realise when I was doing Round the Horn, I was a bit of an idiot, frankly. I didn't know much about Kenneth Williams, and I learned it all as I went along. Because first, for me, it was just the Carry On films, and then I got the chance to be in this Round the Horn Revisited. So I'm listening to loads and loads of episodes of Round the Horn, and then I get the chance to do the missing Hancocks on the radio. And I'm thinking, well, where's the innuendo? You know, and I have to say, on the first recording, I did slip quite a bit in. Yeah. And then Galton and Simpson turned up, and they gave me a bit of a slapping. Yeah, we don't have innuendo, they said. Well, there you go. But it's brilliant. I think all these shows, and I'm sure it's down to Kenneth Williams in many respects, they do stand up to the test of time. Everyone just loves the sound of his voice, and his timing is immaculate.
I've got just a 21-year-old son, and when we go on long trips to the coast or anything, we put on. He wants me to put on Hancock's Half Hour.
Yeah.
Right, I listen to just a minute when I've got long journeys, but he wants Hancock's Half Hour. He gets it. He loves it. So, Lorraine, did you get to know him on a personal level rather than just on a professional level?
I did. We toured before we went into the Fortune, so we went opened at Greenwich. And what you got to remember is when it took off. I really did not want to be any part of this business at all. It was not in my remit. It would not have been my sort of thing to do. I'm basically quite shy, to be honest with you. I always wanted to be better, but brighter, and a bit like a fat lady who wants to be thin, you know. I always wanted to be a bit outgoing. And so when suddenly people went, oh, it's Lorraine Trace, I could go, oh, hello, how are you, all right? But we toured before we went into the West End. And so I spent a lot of time with Kenneth. And some of the things he would do, just couldn't believe it. We'd be sat in Brighton because he believed 1 meal a day, bit of steak, salad, glass of red wine. That was it. Didn't eat again. And we'd sit on the front. It'd be a bit chilly, but the sun would be out. He said, right, you've got to sit in the sun, and you've got to get your, bit of sun a day. We'd be sat there, and old girls would go by, and they'd go, oh, look, it's Kenneth! Kenneth! And he'd go, don't. And I'd go, okay. They go, oh, Kenneth, how wonderful to see you. Oh, like that. And then they'd go, oh, it's so, and he'd say, off. Go on. And they go, oh, Kenneth. He could say and do anything. And we stayed at a couple of hotels together. And I think in his diary, he says, met Lorraine Chase today at Rottingdean for a walk on the beach. She arrived in high-heeled black suede shoes with gold trim. And he often wrote to me, and he never got over the fact that I wrote back to him, and it was the first time I'd ever seen black paper and those silver pens. Do you remember?
Yes.
They came out. And I thought, oh, I'll write to him in that. And it arrived the day that Moody Actor died. What are the sort of top Moody actors? The top Moody actors, there's 3 of them. Oh, Ralph, thank you.
Very good.
He did that when I came up the story.
He's good, isn't he?
So, brilliant.
I know, lovely.
And he went, only you, Lorraine, only you would have the style to write to me as Ralph Richardson dies, and I open up the letter, it's black with silver ink. I didn't know it was going to die. But I loved him.
Final memory, before we move on to the next stage, final memory.
When I went into the show, as I said, it was the first thing I'd ever do. I was very frightened. Peter Charles was my agent at the time, said, Lorraine, don't be yourself. Don't be yourself. You sit quiet. You don't say anything. These are proper actors. So we want, a bit of peace and quiet from you, please. So every day I'd go in, knew my lines, fatal mistake, you shouldn't do that, but I didn't know. And every lunchtime I'd go downstairs, get myself a cheese sandwich, vegetable shop, get myself some watercress, shove it in the sandwich, packet of crisps, sit there quietly over in a corner. Everyone else would have let me do that day in and day out. Kenneth suddenly said, just look at her. Look at her over there. Look, all look at her, look. Bloody silly cheese sandwich and crisps. Look at her, get yourself over here. Because he was kind. He was extremely kind. And I know he could be awkward. I know that. And he could be very cruel. But he was extremely kind.
Nigel, a final thought from you.
I've got my own.
Oh, sorry.
I think the last time I met Kenneth was when he recorded An Audience with Kenneth Williams, which is best known as an ITV series, but in fact was broadcast on Channel 4 in the very early days, about 1982 or 3. And looking at the DVD now, which is well worth doing, I mean, it's available, and the sad thing about it is that almost everybody in the audience is dead. And in fact, Lorraine is still, and Nanette is still here. But just everybody else is dead. And at the very end, when he's doing, he's doing all this stuff, and we were applauding, and the titles are rolling, and suddenly there are my wife and I, and we suddenly stand up, and the whole audience stands up like this, and it's as if there was a pin underneath each seat, so that a standing ovation was guaranteed. But it was well worth it. It's well worth seeing that.
And thank you. And Robin, if you're to be remembered, and hopefully be remembered for a lot more, but if you're to be remembered for the man who does Kenneth, will that make you happy?
Oh, rather. Yes. I mean, I'd be delighted. I mean, I really want to have more of it. People always said, you worried about being stereotyped? No! Playing Kenneth Williams has been the best thing I've ever had. And I have to say, I've just had a wonderful experience of playing at the Royal Albert Hall. We did the test pilot sketch from Hancock. And it was otherwise a very serious, sombre occasion. And a lot of wobbly lips, and it was very, very moving. And then we were the only comedy item on the agenda. And we walked out. And you're thinking, oh my God, there's 7,000 people out here. My tummy's gone all squirty. And but there's the knock on the cockpit, and then you just hear it come back, and I just go up to the microphone and go, "Good evening," and the place erupted. And you think, well, the power of the man. If I could just recreate that, it is just worth millions, isn't it? It's fantastic. So. We all miss him enormously, and if only he could have been here, it would have been nice, wouldn't it?
I think he is.
Yeah.
Lorraine, Nigel, Robin, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Pleasure.